come up with Eve, but we should probably think about getting started.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want me to set the stage? Do you want to set the stage, Gary?
I can set the stage. So record.
Eve is on her way.
Please ask the host to give you permission to record.
Are you not the host?
Yes.
And did you set it up from a different email address?
No. Please ask the host permission to record. So what do we do now? Is it critical that this be recorded? It's really,
I feel it is. I feel it's critical.
Mary, on sound or video as well? Via Zoom?
Hello, everyone. My apologies. I'm just not very technical, I guess.
No problem, Carol. Neither am I.
Okay. Well, we'll try our best here.
Well, I guess, are we, Mary, if you have a recording, we'll find out how to get it from you so we can publish it. Everybody else okay with that?
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay. Thank you, Mary.
my apologies. We're still working through some bugs with Zoom here.
I don't get that one.
Yep, I don't know either. It's worked a couple times before, so anyway.
Yay, there's Eve. Sorry about that.
Hi, Eve.
Hi, everybody.
Hi.
So, Mr. Chair, would you like me to start?
Yes, please.
Okay, well, thanks. First of all, apologies for the delay, but thanks to you all for joining the call. Much appreciated. And I have set a time of 3 hours, but you know, depending on how much of a consensus there may be on items moving forward, it certainly doesn't need to take that long. My guess is it's somewhere between 2 and 2.5 hours. But really the purpose of today is I thought it would be beneficial to get us together, both the trustees and the staff, to attempt to get on the same page with respect to some what I call kind of strategic priorities or special projects moving forward. As we all know, conversion is potentially less than 6 months away. But having said that, there's a number of things that we're currently working on, or a number of initiatives which are proposed, have been talked about, or have started and are in progress that I think we need to talk about in terms of moving forward. And really the objective of today in my mind, and I've kind of, if you look at my agenda and 2:30 to 3:45, it's to attempt to reach consensus on what, and this is just my suggestion, 3 categories of work items or special projects that we need to kind of document, try to get on the same page between all of the trustees and staff, but really 3 categories, those that would be mission critical. And what I mean by that is UBID, really on its own, should or must complete these prior to conversion. Category 2 would be our important special projects or priorities that would be important to commence and have underway prior to conversion. Okay, so they wouldn't necessarily be completed by July, but we would start something and we would be turning, I wouldn't say we'd be turning it over to the CVRD, but it would be in progress once conversion happens. Then category 3 are those special projects, special items, which could, in our opinion, be deferred to after conversion. That could be later this year, in the third or fourth quarters of this year, or 2022, or even beyond. So I came up with a little list, and from various sources. I looked at your last strategic planning report, which I think was done in 2014. Documents that have been provided by Dan and by Ian and by Janice. Things that I'm aware of, having done a little bit of past work with you folks. Items from the conversion report, and items that I've become aware of through past agendas, cow agendas, regular board agendas. And I circulated that list to all of you. And this is just a list that I have compiled. There's a couple of little subcategories. Well, one main subcategory,
Gary,
it's a number of planning initiatives, special projects.
Gary, can I interrupt just for a sec? Sorry, I'm just concerned about recording, and I found a way. Do you have the host code in your email? Because there's a way to get host back here, and we can record it ourselves. Sorry to interrupt, but I just want us to make sure that we've got a recording.
So I have to get out of here, and then I
look at your email. Sorry to interrupt, but I just think we should do this.
Okay. Okay, so what am I looking at in my email?
Do you see anything, the Zoom meeting that says what the host ID is or the host code is?
The
Host
passcode,
key.
the meeting ID number.
It should be a host key is a 6 to 10 digit number. It's not in my email. I looked at that.
It's not in my email. I've got the meeting ID. I've got the passcode.
Yeah, I have those things too. Okay, sorry, I just saw this and thought we might be able to do it.
Did I just miss something? Everybody was frozen for a while. Was it just me or?
It was just you, I think. We're trying to figure out how to record again, but I interrupted Gary, so.
I will be compiling a synopsis of the outcomes of this meeting.
Okay.
Alternatively, if there's such a significant degree of concern about the meeting not being recorded, we could reschedule it.
No, I think Mary's got a recording covered. I just thought it was more, if we could do it ourselves, it would be better. So I'd say we carry on.
Yeah, my apologies. It's my error, obviously, but it has worked previously. It's not working now.
Okay, carry on. Sorry, Gary.
Okay, so I've compiled this list based on a number of sources. I've outlined the proposed outcomes, what we'd like to try to achieve as a result of this. And as I say, this doesn't necessarily need to take 3 hours. I proposed we take a break partway through. But that may not be necessary, again, depending on how much of a consensus there is coming out of this meeting. I've asked the staff to attend, basically to be in a listening capacity, but also to be available to answer any questions if they're in a position to do so, that may come up on some of these items. So really, the first part of the meeting, I said 1 to 1:30, is an introduction, objectives of the today's session. And as I said, at the end of this, I would prepare a summary kind of little report outcomes in terms of what we basically agreed on and maybe some suggested next steps. What I'd like to ask now really of the trustees, but firstly of the trustees, but also of the staff, are there any additions or deletions to this list?
Yeah, I have a couple. Thank you for asking, Gary. One is, and this one is clean up the old water treatment plant site as per the water agreement with UBE. The other is transferring of the water treatment plant debt from RBC to municipal financing. Those are kind of short to-dos, but they are important to be on the list, I think. And one more small one, which is review of policies such as the executive policy, which in my opinion contradicts, portions of it contradict the freedom of information legislation. And that's it for me.
Are there any other additions or deletions?
It's Carol here. I have a couple of comments about things that some of you may not be aware of, but just for consideration, I guess. The first is that UBID and the CVRD entered into an agreement in 2012 regarding the transfer of water assets. I assume now that the provincial policy on conversion supersedes that agreement, but we may need to do something formal to kind of abandon or decommission that agreement. The other issue that I think needs to be added, and I thanks Susanna for adding the remediation of the old water reservoir site. That was on my list as well, which is to be done by 2022. The other thing is we need to transfer the land title for the lake to the CVRD. And the last thing is I'm wondering if the staff need to have up-to-date performance appraisals before transfer. I doubt that they've had them for a while.
Thanks very much. Are there any other additions?
I did have an announcement to make. It might have something to do with what's going on here. So I think I should make that announcement now.
Go ahead, Ed.
Union Bay Estates has been awarded their building permits, and they're going ahead in March, the Discovery Center. And also, down the road very shortly, there is a $400,000 check that will be coming to the Union Bay Improvement District, which has been in escrow with Jim Youngsgren for quite a while. So, and that was to go right directly into the water treatment plant to pay that loan down.
So Ted, does that mean that they've had approval for their sewer system?
On the water, on the Discovery Center, that's been given approval. And the other thing is in the works with the regional district, and they're applying, I think it's going to be for federal monies to run a sewer from, I guess, Courtney Royston down. And I think
Okay.
that's in the works.
Okay.
I have one small announcement. It's actually a correction that I'd like to make, if that's all right.
Certainly.
Thank you. At the last board meeting, I made an incorrect statement about the water treatment plant plans being available to the public. That is incorrect. The water treatment plant plans were never made available to the public. There was a public meeting in March of 2018 where there were whiteboards describing the loan debt. Those numbers actually were incorrect. And several people made that point, including myself. And in doing so, I was verbally attacked by former trustee Glenn Loxham. I left that meeting shortly thereafter. So I assumed wrongly that the water treatment plants were there for the public to see. They were not, and nor were they ever presented in any way publicly in an accessible fashion. I also want to say that the numbers of the debt that were presented were misleading, in my opinion, because they only represented the first 5 years of a 25-year debt, meaning the full cost of interest to the landowner.
You're cutting out, Susanna.
$88 years to pay your credit card debt. So I just, both of those points were publicly witnessed, and there's records for that. So I'm not breaching any confidence in speaking on that. And so I apologize to the community for making that incorrect statement. Thank you.
Are there any other additions or deletions to the list of strategic priority special work items that I've compiled? Okay, so what I would propose to do now is really focus in on the trustees. This is a little bit of a roundtable. And what I'd propose is that each trustee discusses those items, those special projects on the list with the additions noted that you would consider to be the highest priority for undertaking in 2021. Now, I would suggest that we start with 3 or 4 maximum, because I'm not talking here about, of course, these are kind of special projects, special strategic priority items over and above what is the core service that we're providing, which is administration, street lighting, water, and fire service, and payroll, and all the rest of the things that go on in terms of the day-to-day operation of the district. That's what I call the core service. And that's what staff spend typically 80% of their time on. So these items on the list are really outside and above the core services. So what I'd suggest is we start with one of the trustees, go around the table, and each of you, and I'll compile a list here. If we were doing this in person, I'd be standing up at a whiteboard and recording this, but let's go around the table, and each trustee present 3 or 4 maximum items from this list that you would consider to be really, let's start with mission critical. Okay, let's just start with mission critical. In other words, we really need to complete it before conversion.
Gary, question. Do you want us to order our list from most to least important?
I don't think that's absolutely necessary at this time. Let's just see where we're all at in terms of whether there's a consensus or how divergent we are all.
Gotcha.
Let's start with Trustee Terrellson.
Yes, when it comes to priorities regarding the fire department and regarding the purchase of a new fire truck, I think that is something that's being worked on by Ian and Rick Bitton and their crew to get the best possible deal and the best piece of equipment possible. And I think that is something that should be carried on and worked on, because it takes time when you order these pieces of equipment to come in, and the sooner the better. That, I think, should be a priority.
Do you have any others, Ted?
The other part, again, is regarding the water treatment plant and proper facility for the employees that work there, because they can't stay inside of that building because of the temperatures, because of the conditions. They need to be outside of that building in an office area. And that is another thing that should be a priority to be worked on. Again, I did make the announcement regarding the Discovery Center, which could possibly bring that unit that's there along stream to be taken to the water treatment plant if the board decides they want to go that direction. It's that's opened up to a possibility, whereas before we weren't sure whether that was going to happen. So those are the 2 things right now.
So we'll leave it at that for the time being anyway. Eve, I'll turn to you now.
Well, I guess I would have liked to have seen, maybe I should have said this, what the priorities are for Danny and for Ian. First off, what their priorities are, what they really need, and I don't know, because I don't know. So, because I think that whatever they think they really, really, really need would have been a priority. And I guess facilities would be high up for Danny, especially, and his staff. And I'd like to know about that subdivision bylaw. If we don't have a cohesive one, a comprehensive one, a coherent one, by the time of conversion, does that mean, what does that mean? And if we do have one, if we did manage to get it passed or approved, is it still good when we go to conversion? Mm-hmm. Or is it null and void? Because that to me is very important. So yeah, I guess with respect to the fire and water, what's important to what is really needed for them to continue to do, to carry on. And to me, the office washroom for the water, and I guess if they need a fire truck, I really don't know, since I've just got on the board.
Well, certainly after I go around the table with the trustees, I'm going to give each of the staff an opportunity to either provide some comments. I mean, this is an open forum. I'm going to ask them to provide any comments, not put them on the spot, but if they want to suggest in their mind what the strategic priorities should be, this is the opportunity for them to put it forward. And we
Okay.
certainly benefit from them telling us as well. But I'd like to just go around the table with the trustees first.
Great.
So Eve, thanks very much. I take it then, public works priorities, particularly in the water area, office, washroom, those types of things, as well as subdivision bylaw.
Yeah.
Susanna.
I hand copied your list because I was afraid I'd lose everybody if I switched between screens. And I think I missed out, was not the B parcels on the list?
Yes, it was.
Okay, so I missed that. So I'm focused my attention on legislative things that only the trustees can do. Doesn't mean the other things on the list are not important, but that was how I chose to prioritize my list. So it includes water treatment office, washroom, and storage. Second item is update and amend the 2017 subdivision bylaw, which actually is ready to go, minus the most recent legal opinion. My next one is update capital expenditure charges, last done 2014. The next one after that is the B parcels to review. Now, the reason I chose those items is because those items have a very direct financial impact on UBID. And I believe they are something that we need to do, we as an independent standing local government prior to conversion. And we do need clarity regarding the subdivision bylaw, because my recollection of reading the legal opinion is most of the issues were related to the fact that we were not a municipality or a regional district. So you understand this is a catch-22. The bylaw was written so that it would be in concert with the regional district's own bylaw. So we really need some legal clarity on that. I believe the next meeting we have will include Catherine, who is the representative of the ministry. However, I feel it is really in the best interest of the landowners to have comprehensive and up-to-date policies. I feel very strongly about that. Thank you.
So I'm hearing issues related to the water treatment plant, washroom, storage, lunchroom, those types of things. I'm hearing the subdivision bylaw, updating our CECs, and addressing the issue of B parcels.
Correct. Thank you.
Thank you. Chair.
Yeah, so I think everybody's covering, in general, where I see us spending our time as well. And again, I'm looking at it from that perspective of outside of day-to-day operations and outside of the specific activities required for conversion, what are the most pressing things for the UBID board to address prior to conversion? I'd expand beyond water treatment plant office to, basically saying, let's come to resolution of all of the things related to the water treatment plant. Office is certainly top of that list for me. But that would also include the removal of the trailer from the old site and the remediation of that site, or at least getting that plan moving. Second and thirdly, perhaps to solve or finalize or come up with a final decision as to what are we doing about sludge, because there seems to be an ongoing debate about the best way of handling that. And I'm certainly happy that Dan is here for him to give us background so that we can prioritize that. The second thing on my list is subdivision bylaw. I recognize that subdivisions are a big part of what's coming down the pipe for UBID. And I'd probably look at this a little differently as, do we need to invoke or to finalize our existing or our in process subdivision bylaw, including the legal opinion, into something unique to UBID? Or will adopting CVRD's existing subdivision bylaw serve us as effectively? I don't know the answer to that question, but before we decide just to adopt our own, I would like to look at what what CVRD already has in the spirit of not reinventing the wheel. Third on my list is B parcels. So I won't say anything more about that. I think we know what that's about. Fourth on my list is probably a prerequisite to Susanna's update CECs. And that would be for us to create a 5-year capital plan. We'll absolutely need that capital plan in order to be able to do CECs. And I think that capital plan is going to be reasonably complex, needing probably professional consulting like engineering and those sorts of things to help us do that. So those would be my 4.
May I just respond to one tiny little point, Ian, because it's connected to what.
Let's let that happen as a matter of course. Let's just let Gary run through the way he wants to conduct it, because we can debate each other's, but let's just get the list and then we'll follow Gary's process.
Okay, so thanks very much for that. So there's certainly consistency, a fair amount of consistency from what I'm hearing here. And I'll share my thoughts with you in a minute. Again, looking at it, hey, if it was just up to Gary Nason, what would I be suggesting? I'll certainly give you my 2 cents worth on that. And I think there's quite a bit of consistency, I think, with my view of the world as well. But what I'd like to do now is just, and again, I don't want Janice, Ian, Dan, I don't want to put you on the spot, but this is your opportunity to just throw it out there, hopefully in an open and non-confrontational environment. What you would see as the mission critical things that we need to be moving forward, hopefully completing, but certainly moving forward and not dropping the ball on. And how I sometimes like to put this is, hey, Gary, if you're going to drop the ball on something, don't drop it on this, because this is mission critical. Ian, I'll just start with you.
Okay, thanks, Gary. From the fire department's perspective, I think, Ted touched on it. The engine is probably, the engine replacement is probably the most critical. Engine 25 needs to be replaced in order for the fire department to hold the ULC standard for home insurance and fire protection, right? Ideally, a new hull to put that truck in would calm things down. So the fire hull would be probably our next highest priority. But other than that, I can't think of any higher priorities than those 2 for the fire department.
Okay, Dan.
Hi there, everybody. Yeah, basically, I think the trustees touched really well on, the stuff up at the plant and whatnot, and I'm sure we'll talk about that. The only thing I'd like to add is, and I'm sure it's probably in the long-term plan, but the pipe replacement, how much we're putting away per year, and, we definitely have some problem areas that need to be addressed. It's kind of like an old broken wheel, me talking about it, but pipe replacement program would be one that I'd put on the list. The metering program as well. We've rescinded the leak allowance, which I believe in, but because it costs a lot more to make the water now, but the people don't have, any real way other than looking at their meter every day to see if they have a leak. So I know the trustees turned down the metering program, which would have called a customer to let them know they have a leak. So they're not spending $2,000 anymore on this wasted water. So I think the metering program is definitely something that we've dropped the ball on. And that would be on my list. Then there's just some small stuff like some valve installations that I think we should be able to do in the next couple of years. And then the last thing I'd put on my list is a dedicated road at the McKay Reservoir site. It's been under, well, it's been talked about for quite a while with the landowner up there and with the Ministry of Highways. They say it's a driveway. It's dedicated as a road. We're using it. We're basically driving right next to her house up at the top of the road. So I'd like to put that on the list as well. And then that's it.
Okay. Thanks, Dan.
Thank you.
Janice?
Ian and Danny touched on what I feel is important. But the other thing I really want to look at is the adding B parcels to the tax roll. I think that's really important.
Okay.
That's it.
Okay. Thanks very much. And yeah, appreciate that. Okay, from my perspective, again, just you know, I'm the newbie on the block here, and I'm not well grounded on Union Bay, but appreciated the opportunity to spend some time up there last week and chat with most of you. Again, from what I've read and what I've absorbed up to now, I'll throw out 4 that that I would think we need to certainly. I'm not going to say necessarily complete, but clearly I would see we need to be moving forward on, and notwithstanding conversion, making progress. Where we're going to be on July 1st, that's another question, but we need to be moving forward. Again, perhaps in no particular order, but number 1 would be issues related to the water treatment plant. And I'm going to package everything into that title. And I'm talking about the DAF effluent dewatering, the separate office washroom building, the fencing of the old water storage facility, relocation of the shop trailer, potentially up to that particular site. And even some of the things that Carol mentioned in terms of conversion of the assets and transfer of land, the transfer of the land title to the lake. I'm really packaging everything together when I talk about issues related to the water treatment plant, because there are a number of things obviously in that particular package. Second item would be the adding of the B parcels. I think that that's something that, notwithstanding conversion, we need to do further investigating on. We need to move forward on it. I'm not entirely sure, and I need to talk to Dan and to Janice further about how much of an exercise that is in identifying what particular parcels we're talking about. Is that just a really simple exercise of looking at a map and basically, yep, it's fronting this particular property, a main fronts it, it's capable of connection, bingo, we should be adding it to the tax roll? Or is it a more complicated exercise? Once we get an identification of what parcels we're talking about, we make a policy decision, then it really is just a question of how we go about doing that. And you'd want to have some legal input and advice. So I'd put B parcels as number 2. The new fire apparatus, I think it's important to keep the momentum going on that. We have a meeting tomorrow night. I'm going to sit in on that. And there's lots of information and reports that are going to have to come back to the board. But I think we're at the point now where we can seriously look at putting together some sort of a request for proposals. But obviously that would have to come back to the board for a final decision on whether we proceed or not based on the source of funds and those types of things. The other one, a fourth one, again, in no particular order, is the subdivision bylaw. I agree with all of you, I think, that we need to address that. I think very much it's part of the conversion process. Now, I'm not saying that we throw it over to the CVRD, but there's some questions that certainly Eve asked that I'm not even sure I know the answer of yet in terms of that bylaw, even if we were to update it based on legal advice and reenact it and get it registered with the inspector, to what extent would that still be valid after conversion? But it's something we need to, rising from this meeting, we need to carry it and move it forward and discuss it in the context of conversion with the CVRD. And then I'll just throw out a fifth one because it was mentioned by you folks. The development of a 5-year capital expenditure plan, that really has to be done first before you look at updating your CECs, because CECs are based on what's in your 5-year capital expenditure plan. I think that we should pursue that, notwithstanding conversion. And if that basically, if we're on a consensus with that, I'd like to be talking to our engineering consultant about making some progress on that, because I don't think we effectively have one in place. So those would be my 5 at this point in time. Any questions? We're running ahead of time, which is pretty good. Any questions, any comments, any questions to the staff at this point in time based on anything on that list that you folks just put out, or any other items on the list before we kind of go into the final stage here of, okay, do we reach consensus on a number of items? And I think we're pretty close to consensus on 3 or 4 from what I'm hearing. Any questions of the staff?
Well, before we do that, I'd really like to hear from Carol more thoroughly. I know she
I'm
asked
sorry.
for additions to the list, but I'd love to hear from her in terms of what she considers the priorities as well.
Yeah, my bad. Because Carol's not on my screen here, or she is just with a big telephone, I forgot to ask her.
Okay. Well, I certainly agree with everyone about issues related to the water treatment plant, whether it's the dewatering or settling ponds or talking to the developer and getting some more land, or, all of those issues around that, and washrooms and storage and all that kind of stuff, I think are really important to have done before we transfer. I think one of the issues that's kind of related to that both Ian and Dan have commented on, is the inventory of the water supply and delivery system, which ties into the 5-year plan. I have a question for Ian, I guess, about the new fire truck. You're talking about a new fire truck, I gather.
Yes.
Okay, is it going to fit into the existing fire hall?
It will have to at this point because there's no new hall to put.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Okay. Yeah. I mean, as much as I think we need a new fire hall, unfortunately, until Union Bay Estates gets itself organized, we're not going to be able to move ahead on that.
Yeah.
Because,
From what I understand at this point, they still have about a year to service that lot, but
right.
That's all I know.
Okay. Other than a couple of the legal things that I commented about on the UBID and CVRD agreement and transferring the land title, I think that I certainly support what the rest of you have said. So that's it.
Thanks, Carol. Very much appreciated. Any any questions before we move forward? Any questions of staff of any of the items on the list, or any of the items that each of you four have, or five have sort of proposed?
I have one quick question, please, and this is of Danny. I'm just wondering, what is the approximate area of the fenced area around the water treatment plant currently? Is it 4 acres?
That's correct.
It's everything inside the fence
It's not,
is,
no, there's
That's
stuff
what I'm
that's
asking.
there's stuff outside the fence. There's some ditching that was done outside the fence. There's a buffer around the outside of the fence that's included in the 4 acres.
so again, for clarity's sake, we have basically cleared and in some way fenced off 4 acres.
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any further questions?
Yes, I have a question for Dan.
Yep.
Dan, I was wondering if you checked with other hauling companies, septic companies, etc., regarding affluent, regarding different costs, if they're all within the scope of what you're paying now, or if they can do it for less.
Yes, I have looked at it. There's basically 2 companies that have the 2,500 gallon truck. Valley Septics is one. I forget what's the name of the other one. I forget off my hand, but the hauling is pretty much a flat fee. The hauling is the same price for each company. It's the tipping that is the expensive part, and that's $1,000 at the treatment plant. So the hauling is $180.
Okay, the other
Not
part
really
is
good.
on the tipping fee.
Yeah.
I was wondering if you could get in touch with Daniel Arbor, our area A director,
Okay.
and see if there can be something done about that tipping fee.
Okay. I don't think well, I don't want to say anything, but I think you'd have to call CBRD and ask them about the tipping fee.
This sounds more like a Gary to CBRD type of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Their rates have gone up 35% in the last year and a half.
Now,
So
this would be the tipping fee precisely for what?
For the sludge
The sludge.
Yeah.
In the landfill,
in the wastewater treatment plant.
in the wastewater treatment plant.
That's
Yeah,
correct.
because they don't take it at the landfill right now, right?
They've told
No.
me they don't take sludge at the landfill, which we don't know exactly about that. So
That's a question.
that is the question, but so far the question from CVRD is no, we do not take the sludge at the landfill.
Okay.
so
That is the answer to a question that has already been asked of the CVRD.
Dan, I must have misunderstood you. Hello?
Yeah.
When I believe you said at the last meeting, something like, once we convert to the CVRD, the price would go down. Did I misunderstand that?
Yeah, no, there's been a rumor going around a bit that that the landfill does take sludge. They have told us that they don't. So that's basically where I got to leave that.
But where did that statement come from? That it would suddenly go down
It's the price is never going to go down from the CVRD. Now,
So
now CVRD decides to take it to the landfill, that's totally up to them.
so I misheard you. You didn't say that.
Okay, if you were to be able to take it to the landfill, it would cost you $40.
If I can interject,
1,000.
what I remember hearing was a speculative statement from Dan that said things might change if CVRD were responsible for the water treatment plant, but it was speculative in nature. Would that be about right, Dan?
That's correct, yeah.
Thank you for clarifying.
Yeah,
I-
and on this issue, and thanks to Danny, he gave me a great tour of the water treatment plant last week or the week before when I was up there, and we talked about, all these associated issues with the plant. Much appreciated. That's, issues with respect to the tipping fee and the issue of sludge at the landfill. That's something that I'll be discussing directly with James Warren as early as our next call on Thursday,
Good.
because I have a better understanding now of some of those issues. So certainly that's something that now I'm going to elevate to the executive level at CVRD in terms of a discussion.
I have a bit of information that you may not be aware of about the dewatering of the effluent. When I was on the board, we were having discussions with Island Timberlands at that point, that if we did dewater the effluent, they were interested in entering into an agreement with UBID to take that, I guess whatever it is, and put it on their forest lands. So that, I don't know if that would be an economical proposition or not, but.
Well, there's been
Ian,
lots of controversy down in South Island on that issue.
Oh, is there?
Oh, yeah. Well, big time.
Okay.
Ian Monroe, did you hear what Carol just said?
I didn't. I went to get my water.
Yeah, Carol, would you mind please repeating that?
Sure. When we were having our initial discussions about the water treatment plant and whether we would have settling ponds or whether we would try to dewater the effluent, Island Timberlands expressed interest in taking the dewatered effluent and distributing it on their forest lands.
Okay, thank you. I did hear that part of it. And I think
Okay.
this is part of that as we roll up into our discussion of options,
Yeah.
that this comes into that entire water treatment plant, like tying a bow around, are we done? And are we ready to send this over as is? And do we need to resolve the sludge issue before conversion happens?
Before I move on, any further questions of staff in regards to any of these particular items?
I guess one quick one would be, how easy is it to determine which B parcel lots are adjacent or fronted by a water main? Because that's the qualification for whether they can be charged a parcel tax.
Yeah, that was my question. Dan or Janice, is this a big exercise to identify what particular parcels we're talking about?
Well,
Is
I'd
there-
have to pull together a list with addresses for Danny and get them to him, and then he has to do what he needs to do on a map, I assume. Danny?
Yeah, addresses would be really helpful. I don't know if a lot of them would have it. They would have just a number, would they not?
A lot of them have just lot B on 6, for an example. So
Yeah,
big
so
challenge.
I could pretty much do most of the work, I would think, on our maps. But I would have to have real good addresses. That's for sure. I could, if it's just a roll number and says Union Bay, then I won't be able to do much with that.
Okay, well, that's kind of a technical issue that,
Yeah.
between Dan and Janice and myself.
I don't think it would be that onerous, to tell you the truth, Gary.
Okay.
That's really what I was after, was how much work before we decide, yes, let's do that one.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay. Any further questions? Then I'll go out on a limb because what I'm hearing is on at least 3 items, we seem to be all on the same page. And again, in no particular order, but maybe it is. This is the order. Issues related to the water treatment plant. And obviously, some of these issues are bigger than others, and they may not be completed before conversion. But I'm talking about a package of issues. Relocation, the office issue, the washroom, lunchroom, the office issue. I'm talking about potentially relocation of the existing trailer. I'm talking DAF effluent dewatering. I'm even talking about the issue of the settling pond for sludge, potential donation of additional land adjacent to the water treatment plant. Those types of issues that are, and even some of the things when Carol, I mentioned, or one of you mentioned about transferring of assets and the lake, the land title to the lake. I'm really sort of packaging that into one particular special priority. And obviously with conversion on the horizon and the fact that the CVRD is going to own all these assets, to what extent in every way, shape, and form is still an open question in my mind. These are all items that I'm going to be discussing with James Warren as early as Thursday. And we're going to be having monthly, well, more than monthly, but at least monthly working committee meetings, of which 3 of you are on. These issues are going to be coming up. And there's a special subcommittee of the working group for water that obviously is going to have to be totally brought up to speed on these issues. So item number 1 that I'm hearing a pretty good consensus on is issues related to the water treatment plant and that entire package. Second item is the subdivision bylaw. Again, this is what I'm hearing. I agree. I think that this needs to be addressed, brought up in the context of conversion, but also we need to do separate work on that, but get a better understanding of the force and effect of that particular bylaw post-conversion. And that is something that can be addressed through that planning working group, but also I have the bylaw, I have the legal opinion, and what I'm hearing is even notwithstanding conversion, we have to do further work on that. How to get some of these things done, that's our issue. But what I'm hearing is that's a second one. The third one I'm hearing is B parcels. Again, I agree with that. I think we need to clean that up if it's something that needs to be cleaned up or pursued. How we get there, how much field work, grunt work has to be done between Dan, Janice, and I, we can work that out, but I'm hearing B parcels. So I'm hearing 3 that there's a pretty solid consensus on in terms of giving us our marching orders. The other one that I'm kind of hearing too is the fire apparatus. Moving forward on that, I know there's issues with respect to the size of the hall and the, down the road, the relocation of the fire hall and a new hall. But notwithstanding that, we need to, because of the age of this apparatus and insurance implications, we need to keep that momentum going. And it's for us, Ted, myself, and Ian to figure out how we can do that. And but move ourselves towards getting into a position to doing a request for proposals. So I'm kind of hearing that as a fourth one. I'll just stop from there. Am I on safe ground at this point in terms of those 4?
I think there was pretty clear consensus regarding the CEC charges, knowing that we need to do a 5-year capital plan. That's what I heard.
Yeah, and I pretty much agree with that. Maybe I have just a little bit of a different view on the CEC charges. As I mentioned before, what you have to do first on that is to flesh out a 5-year capital plan, because that's what drives the CEC charges. So I would agree with that. I think I mentioned that as a fourth or fifth. We do need to start work on that. That is a consultant project to a certain extent. I'd want to have a talk with our engineering consultant about whether they could give us a hand on that. Obviously, water is a huge component of that. And what we'd like to do, from my view, is try to put in place the framework of a 5-year capital plan that the CVRD is then aware of and can use it as the basis for, obviously they have development cost charge, they call them development cost charges. They would eventually be subsumed by their development cost charges. But I agree, I'll refer to it as a 5-year capital expenditure plan as opposed to CECs. But I would propose that I look into the development, starting the work on that 5-year capital plan, have a talk with Dahl Engineering, see what they would charge us to give us a hand in that. Obviously, they're pretty fine. They're pretty tuned up on issues and costs with respect to the water supply and delivery system. Fire, though, obviously, Ian would have to have an input into that. Janice would have to have an input into that as well. But I do agree. So there's 5 right there. B parcels, subdivision bylaw, water treatment plant issues, the package, the fire apparatus, and the CEC, the 5-year capital plan.
That'll be a lot in 5 months.
Yeah, and I agree. I agree. I certainly agree. But I honestly don't feel, first of all, I think you have to recognize that we're not going to be completed on all of these items. For example, B parcels could be, definitely. It would be nice. It would nice to be on that one. From my view, it would be nice to be completed on that, have that cleaned up one way or the other, make the policy decision, identify those parcels and make that policy decision before conversion. The subdivision bylaw, some unanswered questions on that in regards to what the CVRD position on that bylaw is and how that interfaces with what they have in terms of rezoning and subdivision bylaws and things like that. But that's very much something that must be addressed really in conversion, notwithstanding whether we want to do it or not. So I see us certainly picking up the ball on that. Water treatment plant, my suggested approach to that would be I raise all of these issues in the context of the CVRD conversion process. I'm going to have a direct one-on-one with James Warren, outline all of these particular issues, have their head water guy and their occupational health and safety person come down and have a comprehensive tour of that facility. Maybe, Dan, they've had that before. And we put all these issues on the table because, again, they're going to be owning this asset, in the not too distant future. But certainly we need to do something about that office and the washroom issue and how to approach that. It has to be in the context of a discussion with the CVRD. The apparatus, definitely. Ian, you forwarded me a request for proposals that was drafted out by the head fire guy at the CVRD. And I think that we could leverage their assistance in putting our mind to developing an RFP. It'll have to come back to the board with a report in terms of, okay, are we ready now to go to the market to purchase a piece of equipment? What's the source of funding and those sorts of things? But I certainly see us being in a position potentially to be going to an RFP before conversion, potentially. if that's the policy decision of the board at the end of the day, but we have to bring something to them. And then on the 5-year capital plan, again, that's a bit of a consulting project, but depending on what a Ken Dahl of the world would say about that, I think we definitely need to make progress on that. Whether we'll complete that by a 6-month time frame, that's another question. But we need to do that. It's to the benefit of the CVRD to do that. It's to their benefit that we initiate that. So I agree this is a lot, but I'm looking at some of these things in the context of the conversion process as well. So, and there's some resources that we could potentially levy to get some of these things done. That's the way I'm looking at it. So is there kind of a consensus on those 5 issues that we would consider to be, Gary, we want to see progress on each of these 5 issues in some way, shape, or form?
I'd phrase it a little differently in that I think you've nailed the 5. And what I'd like then to have a discussion on is in the last section of your agenda is where do they fit into the categories? And it may actually, here's an example in my head, we may end up dividing some of them. So like in the water treatment plant, from my perspective, that office is a cannot miss. We must do the office for the staff, but I might not consider that to be a special project. I might consider that to be an operational imperative. Now it needs board approval because there's a capital expenditure, all those sorts of things, right? And the rest of the water treatment plant, like what are we doing with the sludge? When do we need to remediate the old site? All those things, maybe we need to start them, maybe we don't. B parcels, and I won't go through the rest, but I think, I think that's the next exercise here is how do those 5 fit into your categories? Because I like your categories.
Yeah, and I'm going to hedge a little bit because in my discussion with Mr. Warren as early as Thursday, and I've had a number of them, and the conversion process, by the way, is very much started. I'm being called into at least 4 subcommittee groups right now to have meetings. Just going to hedge a little bit on that question, Ian, only so far as to say I see all of them right now fitting into category 2, important to commence and have underway prior to conversion. I'll take the issue of the office. And again, I'm not a water treatment plant expert and I'm not steeped in the history, but I've seen what we have up there. I'd be a little bit gun shy of just charging off and solving the issue and getting something up there. And then come July, we're turning the whole outfit over to the CVRD and they're looking and saying, oh my God, we had a better solution than that. Why didn't you talk to us about this other option or whatever, right? So I'd certainly put all of these 5 into category 2 at this point in time, that we need to pick up the ball and we need to get them going. And some of them, a couple of them are already in kind of a little bit of progress. Mission critical, must complete prior to the conversion. I would be saying that B parcels certainly would be one that, notwithstanding conversion, I think we need to address that. And I don't see why, unless it's a huge exercise to identify these parcels, that we make the policy decision and we kind of clean this up. The fire apparatus, I think, I don't see why we couldn't be in a position to have an RFP developed by conversion and that come back to the board for formal approval to proceed. I'm not certain to what extent the board's been involved in this up to date, up to now. Have you provided a motion saying, that's it, take the necessary steps to procure a piece of apparatus and with the source of funding identified, and we've been through all those steps. But I would see that, again, us definitely being able to start that initiative. The 5-year capital plan perhaps could be in category 1. Ideally, it would be great, because I think the CVRD, in my discussions with James, is saying, boy, whatever work you could do to get that done would be great for our financial planning purposes, so that we can then, envelop those in their 5-year financial plans. So right now, I'd be saying that category 1, barring any huge surprises, would be B parcels and the 5-year capital plan, with best efforts being made to try to complete them or to get them to the extent where they're pretty skookum in terms of where we're at. The other 3, the apparatus, the water treatment plant issues, and the subdivision bylaw, I would put in category 2 at this point in time, because I'm not sure where the subdivision bylaw issue is going to end up in terms of how that interfaces with the CVRD's bylaws and policies.
Can I ask a question, Gary?
Yeah.
When's your next working group meeting?
Oh gosh, I got the main working group.
Yeah, the one with Ian and Carol and Susanna.
Hold on, I'll just tell you right now.
February 9th, I think.
Yeah.
Okay, could
Yes,
it not be,
fine.
could that issue not be put on the agenda and asked right at that meeting? It's representative, you've got the province and the region at that meeting. Could you not just ask them?
Sure. What issue are you talking about, Eve?
The bylaw. The
Oh, yeah.
subdivision bylaw.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Get
But-
that put on the agenda?
Yeah, we can put it on the agenda. There's a planning subcommittee. What they've done is they've identified 7 areas, I think, where there's little working groups, and they're primarily at the staff level. One of them is planning, and that's going to be whenever the planning committee working group is convening its first meeting, that's going to be top on my list. But if you want to bring that up at a working group meeting where it's all of us, right? I can certainly do that.
Well, I just think it's an appropriate place for that question, if not at one of your subcommittee
Yep.
meetings, you know.
Sure. Yep. Okay.
I have I don't know if we're doing this sorting into categories right now, but I do have a somewhat of a differing view in terms of how I would sort them, just a separate opinion. To me, category 1 is B parcels and resolving what we're doing with the subdivision bylaw. Like, we're either saying we are using CVRDs or we're creating our own, but we need that done. So I would call those must-be dones. They're mission critical. I would also I would divide the water treatment plant issues into 2. And I would say the office is a must-be done. I believe we've got WorkSafe BC issues and all kinds of things that we're going to be facing, union issues maybe, if we don't get that done. I would consider the fire apparatus and the capital plan category 2. And that I don't think we're going to get our 5-year plan done. I think we're going to have a lot of information going. We're going to be understanding what the needs are, but will we really have a sorting of this is when we're going to spend the money, like a full sort of here's what happens over 5 years? I don't know if we'll get there. And the remainder of the water treatment plant, things like remediation of the old site, moving the trailer might be a part of the office. Hey, just get the materials over into the office, but dealing with sludge and all that, I think we can defer it. You know, what we've got is working. What we have is perhaps a sub-optimized solution, but I don't think we have to optimize it before we convert. So that would be my sort of sorting of these things. And I'd love to hear from other trustees if they see it any differently as well.
I agree with you completely, Ian, but I'd add everything Carol said onto the must-do list before. That's performance appraisals for the staff, transfer of the land title to the lake, and deal with that water asset agreement that we have, whether it's abandoned, deactivate, whatever. Those are, to me, must-dos and probably quite, relatively easy compared to a 5-year capital plan. And they sound very important at the same time.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I guess I had already categorized them in my mind as something that has to happen for conversion. It's not, a discrete project, right? Like it's almost like they gotta happen.
I agree.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I got completely dropped, so I missed all of what Ian said, but I'm going to assume that it was all good.
It's all
Thank you
good.
for your faith.
Art?
It's all good.
Oh,
Uh,
Ian, I take no issue with what you've done there. Category 1, B parcel subdivision bylaw. Yes, what I'm taking that is that we basically got to get to a place to have it resolved one way or the other. What that's going to look like, we may not know, but it's got to be resolved. It's mission critical. Same thing with the office. We've got to have the issue solved one way or the other. It may not, we don't necessarily know what it looks like at this point in time, but we've got to have it solved before conversion. I don't disagree. Category 2 of the apparatus and the 5-year capital plan. Maybe I'm not quite as pessimistic as you are. We'll see potentially what we could get done with the 5-year capital plan.
I really would like to see us work on the 5-year capital plan because it has not been done. It has not been done since I was elected in 2016. And so I really support moving forward on that. Thank you.
Okay. And on the performance appraisals, one of the subgroups for conversion is human resources. It's a joint CUPE employer, CVRD, UBID, CUPE committee. And I have little doubt that this issue is going to come up in that context. And I wouldn't disagree that, it certainly needs to be something that needs to be discussed. But, we are operating under the terms of a collective agreement. So that is going to be covered off in some way, shape, or form as part of the conversion process. The first meeting of that HR group is next week. So I'll have further information on that. The transfer of assets, I see that very much as a conversion. That's one of the check boxes on the conversion to-do list is having all the necessary legal pieces in place to transfer all of this stuff over to the CVRD. So I see that kind of being covered off. That is really it has to be done. And it will be done through the executive order and council issued by the government.
I see the performance appraisals as being one way of protecting the staff as well in the transfer. That if there is a current performance appraisal, then that sets the scene for whoever their next supervisors are.
Yeah, and I'm not sure where we're at internally on that, but again, I have little doubt that issue is going to come up. And so I'll be able to inform you better on that.
Ted, you were trying to say something a little while back and just wanted to
yeah, I
come
think
back to you.
the one item I was thinking about was regarding moving the trailer off of the old site over to the water treatment plant and then looking after the ground under the agreement before time runs out. Well, this time of the year is the wrong time of the year to disturb that ground and to go in and do the necessary cleanup. But if we can get that trailer moved off you know, that's one thing that needs to get done prior to that regardless. And that again is a matter of just moving it. The other thing is the office regarding for the water treatment plant. There's two ways to go on it now, because we know what is happening with Union Bay Estates and then moving forward.
Please don't mention that here.
So, okay, but anyhow, I'm just saying we have to make a decision on that and get on with it, whichever way we go. That one.
I'll just add a comment, Ted, on that trailer. I don't know how movable that trailer will be. I remember moving it there in the first place, and it was pretty iffy even then.
Yeah, hi, Carol. Yeah, I was there. The front of the trailer almost fell off.
Yeah.
What I was going to mention to Ted that I think so I've looked into the moving. There's only two companies that do it. They're both out of Nanaimo. The company that moved the trailer here initially has said there's no way he's going to move it again.
Yeah.
The other company said, yeah, I'll move it. It's $2,000. If it falls apart on the road, I keep driving and you clean up the mess.
Yeah.
So I think the trailer
to cut our losses.
Decommissioning and getting crumbled up into little pieces.
Yeah.
All right, well, if that's the case, then I guess that's basically a salvage job.
I would think so.
I think it might be as well.
Okay, well, that
Danny,
satisfies me.
Danny, you're to be commended for having put up with it for as long as you have.
Thanks, Carol.
Could I just ask one question of Susanna, because one of the subgroups for the conversion process is legislative services. So they're going to want to know and take a look at all of our policies, you know, in-camera meetings, committees, meeting procedures, all of those policies. They're going to want to take a look at that. You mentioned the executive policy, which in your view may be contrary to the freedom of information and protection of privacy. Not sure. I guess maybe I have seen that policy. So your concern is that really it's perhaps outside of the scope of legislation here?
Actually, I think, Gary, you're right. You did see it. You mentioned it when you were, yeah, so in my opinion, not all of it, but first of all, it's redundant because we have a closed meeting policy. And secondly, there are portions of it which, in my opinion, do not fit with the freedom of information legislation which we're governed by.
Right.
So that was developed by the board when Ted was elected in April of 2018. And frankly, it was designed to give the board a way to have meetings without the public present.
Okay. Well, I'll certainly, thanks for the heads up. I'll certainly take a look at that. And yeah, it's starting to come back now.
Thank you.
Take a look at that again and certainly raise that in the context of not conversion, but they're going to want to know all our policies. Also, I'll take a look at it. It may be redundant anyway, in 5 months, right?
I agree. However, it is a policy which I feel very strongly is in contradiction with legislation that we are governed to operate under, whether we are part of CVRD or remain an improvement district.
Okay.
And you have a meeting bylaw as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, we
And
do.
we have a closed meeting policy.
Okay, well, are we where we need to be? This has been quite helpful. So just to reiterate, what I'm hearing is category 1, mission critical, get on with it, we need to ideally have it done in one way, shape, or form. May not know what it's going to look like, but get on with it. Category 1B parcels, the subdivision bylaw, and the office washroom, lunchroom issue at the water treatment plant. Category 2 would be the fire apparatus, the 5-year financial plan, which would feed into CEC charges, but certainly making best efforts to start work on a 5-year financial plan. And then those other issues related to the water treatment plant. Yeah, give first priority to the office issue, but all those other issues need to be worked on in the context of the discussion, the overall discussion of the water treatment plant. The issue of performance appraisals, we need to be attuned to that. How is that going to be handled in the context of the human resource component? Did I hear that correctly? Or
Yes.
The only thing I would amend slightly is, that additional water treatment plant stuff like sludge and remediation of old site is like category 2.5 to 3. Like if they don't happen, it's not gonna have a big consequence. We've got, I believe, still a 1.5 years left in the time allotted to remediate the old site. Might be only a year, but there's still a good amount of time. Maybe we got to start that. Maybe we got to know what the plan looks like for that, but I don't see us resolving or making any changes to the way we're dealing with sludge or any of those sorts of things before we convert.
But I hear you. You certainly want those addressed in the context of really the conversion discussions on the water treatment plant, and these issues to be brought to the attention of the CVRD. And if we can resolve some of them, fine.
Yeah, or does CVRD say, no, we got him, just leave him, take care of this other stuff first?
Okay. Are there, from my perspective, I think I'm coming out of here with what I was looking for, but I'll throw it back to the trustees. Is there any further questions, anything you wish to discuss, ask of staff at this point in time? And then I'll also ask the staff, are there any questions or clarifications that you'd like to ask of the trustees or even myself at this time?
I'd like to know one thing. Ian, the fire chief, when will we lose our, or have we already lost our certification with to protect for insurance purposes?
I believe we're somewhere around 4 years left.
Oh, 4 years. Okay, thank you.
I have another question. Hello?
Go ahead.
Okay, sorry. I can't, sometimes I have a green box around me and then sometimes I don't. The point I made, which is pretty simple, about transferring the water treatment plant debt from RBC to municipal financing.
Has that not been done?
I actually don't think
We can't do it.
You have to be part of the CVRD.
Oh, that's right. Well, yeah, well, that'll be handled through the conversion process.
I just don't want to lose sight of it.
No.
I just want it to
That's one of
be-
the check boxes on the conversion list.
No, I think Susanna's on a point here, right? That this should be on our category 3.
Yeah,
In that it cannot be done while we're in an improvement district. But if we convert our RBC debt to MFA debt, we will save 0.5% interest rate.
Yeah.
But the CVRD has to do that, an improvement district can't.
Right. Yeah, I think it's something that would happen anyway, but I got it. Okay.
this is so important. 0.5 percentage point is really important. I just don't want it to be lost in the melee.
You bet. Okay. Mr. Chair, trustees, is there any questions of us or staff, or are we good to go?
Other than if the staff have some questions of us.
Yeah. Dan, Janice, Ian?
I have a question. The metering. I guess my question is now that we don't have leak allowances, there's really no way for the customer to be notified of a leak. Like they could have a leak that starts the day after we do the meter reading, doesn't get picked up for 2 months, their bill could be $6,000.
Can I give you an example?
I would love one.
Danny's aware of it. This last water bill run, there were 2 with significant leaks. One is an issue in the past, like they know they've got a leak and they're not fixing it. The other one is a brand new leak and the bill was $2,600. So with no leak allowance, how do they remedy that? And they did not get any warning from their meter because those are not the type of meters we have. So it's an issue.
Yeah,
So can you tell me, Janice, why the leak allowance policy was rescinded?
Because last year we credited over $17,000 in leak allowances.
Holy mackerel.
Yeah. So what that means is a lot of people's infrastructure on their side of the meter is old and is not being maintained.
yeah, and let's not forget how much more the water takes to process now. We never had problems before because we didn't have a treatment plant, but we are making every liter of water now, which is why we got rid of the leak allowance, I believe. But without some warning to the customer, I think we're going to have a big problem when we get some of these bills coming in for $2,000-3,000. I think the metering program that I suggested that was turned down, I mean, it lets you know the very next day if you have a leak on your system. And the reason why the metering program was submitted was because we're at 20 years, we're coming up to 17 years on the initial meters, and they're starting to fail.
And I can tell you, I live in Comox and we have the meters that Danny is talking about, and you get an alert if your consumption is high, and the town gets the alert. So they will actually phone you or come to your house to warn you.
Yeah.
And they do not have leak allowances.
So
Well,
as I remember our decision on this, it wasn't against the idea of smart meters and the software. What it was about was the timing, in that CVRD already uses this same program, as I understand, and that we would be buying a redundant license. And it was an attempt to save money just to get through to the time of conversion. And
Yeah.
I think we'd said if conversion doesn't happen, we would go forward with it. My understanding also was that we still have the option of installing smart meters without the software so that we would be ready for it as we go, so that any meters that needed to be replaced could be replaced with those smart meters. Now, that we had not yet considered the leak allowance at that time. And so perhaps we should have considered joining the 2 discussions, and maybe that's what needs to happen.
The new meters will not work with our software.
Will not work at all?
No.
That's the problem.
So can I just comment that prior to Wi-Fi, we had to deal with analog systems. That's just a reality. And I agree with Ian Monroe's recollection of the reason why we postponed it. It was not that we turned it down, we postponed it. Thank you.
Well, you're going to have some very unhappy customers.
Yeah.
So what we will be doing though is we will be bringing those complaints to the board, just so you know.
Yeah.
My
Well,
rec-
of course, that's our role.
My recollection last meeting last week was, I believe, Susanna, you raised the policy based on an email that the chair raised. I'd penciled this in for a cow discussion next week at our meeting. I'm hearing maybe we need to have a further discussion about this, put the policy back on. Dan may need to, you mentioned a previous recommendation that you had made. Maybe we need to get that revisited again and have a discussion at the next cow meeting in terms of moving forward. Make sense?
Yeah, I agree.
Or at a minimum, making sure that that gets included in your 5-year capital planning.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll put it on the agenda for the cow.
Mr. Chair, I was going to say, if I recollect right, Dan said that these new smart meters were actually the same price as the old meters, and there are a number of the old meters failing. So really, even though they can't be read at this time, might be a very wise idea to start replacing them with those meters for the future, regardless, because of the conversion. Because then it will probably happen.
I hear you, Ted. Let's reserve this for the cow discussion and revisit.
Yeah, I agree.
Could somebody confirm the date for the cow? Is it February 4th?
Yeah, first Thursday in the month, right?
Okay.
So it's February 4th at 2:30.
Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, trustees, are we pretty well there? Any further comments? I'm satisfied in terms of where we got at this point in time. I'm fairly clear moving forward.
I am as well. Thank you for your organizing skills and leading us through this, Gary, and thanks to the staff for their insights and participation as well.
Well, I do have an apology because I'm sorry about the recording. I'm usually reasonably adept at these types of things, but there's been a few hiccups along the way in terms of me hosting Zoom meetings. So this is one I'm going to have to resolve before the next meeting. I may have to have Mary send me the link to the recording to help me out on this one, but we'll have it sorted out by the next meeting. And just to give you some degree of assurance, I did record the last board meeting on the 21st. It's in my computer. I'm just still figuring out how to get the link to Sonia for the website. So it hopefully will be up on the website. And I have prepared the draft minutes of that meeting last week, and they should be up on the website shortly. So we'll get there on the Zoom issues.
Thank you, and thank you to Mary for helping us out.
Okay, well, thank you, Mary. Thank you. Okay. Okay, that's it. If there's nothing further. Thanks, Ian. Thanks, Janice. Thanks, Dan, for participating. Dan, I'll probably be in touch with you about the metering issue and get a little bit more clarification. And Ian and Ted, I'll see you tomorrow, or we'll Zoom tomorrow night for the apparatus.
You bet.
Much.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, everybody.
Many
Okay,
thanks.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ian.